So this meeting is being live streamed. Got it. So that should be going on now. Just bear with me, Elsa, a couple of seconds, and it should come up on my phone so that we can see any comments. If there's anybody awake at this time, mind you, our American cousins will all be snoozing now, or if they're like me, they'll be it's 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock, I think, in the USA, and they'll be wide awake if it's anything like me. Right, there we go. Oh, here we go. Let me see now. Carol Schickel is watching. Hiya, Carol. Nice to see you, Carol. Elsa, lovely to see you. So it's 6 p.m. down under. Oh yeah, I put this thing up about do you come from the land down under? Because I love Men at Work, that group of Men at Work, and I don't know why, but one of my favorite records of all time is called Overkill by them, right? And I don't know whether you know the words, but it's all really about being awake in the morning and having to walk around, just to get all these demons out of your head, really. So I understand that song very much, Anyway, how the devil are you?
Well, we're very good, thank you. It's been a lot of buzz going on today. Yeah, we had yesterday I had it down as Ascension Day, and it had everything to do with number 5, a lot of number 5. And sometimes the messages come through, it could be 6 months ago, and I've written it down as Ascension Day, and then I forget about it. But yesterday, Ascension Day came through, and I was cranky yesterday. So I think it was Gigi. She was annoyed yesterday too. So we just sat down and just talked. Why are we actually cranky? What are we cranky about? And it was the same feeling. So then I said, well, is this the same thing, or is this outer worlder energy coming in that's making us have? And so by just being able to share with someone else, and Gigi and I are completely different characters, it just made us feel better, because we realized it wasn't an issue that I had to deal with. It was just actually something that was, coming in, that was affecting both myself. But all the other family members, they were fine.
It's very interesting, this, because a phrase I use when I'm helping people or talking to people is, if there's something playing on your mind, best get it off your chest. You know what I mean? And I encourage people to just share wholeheartedly about the feelings that they're getting. Right, because yeah. I don't think until it's out, I don't think that we can clearly see what's actually happening, and so it's a bit like ticker tape to me, that if you express it without sort of allowing the editor, I call this the editor, with the editor come in to block the process, it's almost like at the end of the ticker tape, that's where the answer is, but you've got to express it fully. It's almost like, I'm like a snake charmer sometimes. I'm trying to get stuff out of people, right, to actually see what the end result is, really. And sometimes it might be as simple as turn left at the bottom of the road, and it, to me, the solutions are simple. They are simple, but during the process of trying to get it out, it can become overcomplicated, really. And I think that we can tend to overanalyze things, right, and get hold of them before it's fully expressed. Before I was thinking, God, I don't feel very inspired this morning at all. I've got no idea what we're going to be talking about, because, and now it's starting to sort of come now, really,
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you. And sharing with somebody who doesn't butt in to give their own sort of ideas on what it might be as well, that's quite a difficult one. And what I've learned, and I'm still learning this, is if you learn to listen and listen to learn, really, and that means keeping your gob shut while the person fully expresses themselves. And sometimes I get excited because somebody will say something, I'll go, oh God, yeah, and I'll jump in, and try and say, yeah, I feel like that as well. So that's something I'm still sort of trying to refine within myself.
Well, my husband Richard would love you saying that to me because he's like, one thing with Richard and myself is because we just seem to be able to connect really easily. I'm always jumping the gun with him, and he says, "I haven't finished," and I said, "Well," and he says, "You know, I know that when I married you, you're a Gemini, but I really want all four of you to be quiet." He always says to me, just quieten all four of them down. Let me finish what I have to say. Then, but it's it's calming the excitement down. Because what happens is your ions are going because they're exhilarated by the conversation. So, yeah, I totally agree with what you just said. I have to zip it sometimes. So,
It's
yeah,
hard though as well. I think when we were kids, you see, we'd all be around the sort of kitchen table, and we'd all be firing stuff for each other all the time. And I miss that really in this sort of over polite world of, yes, I am listening to you and I'm taking fully in what you said. It takes away some of the spontaneity as well. So I've sort of got different ideas on that one. And I think sometimes having one of those more rapid conversations, it's more exhilarating, as you say. And
yeah.
it's more going with a sort of a higher frequency flow of information. And that's what seems to happen to me is the information comes into me really, really quickly. And I have to almost say to that part of me or whatever the hell it is that's feeding me the information, I have to say, can you just hang on, because my emotional processing center is burning out at the moment. So if you can just back off a bit and feed me a bit more slowly, because not only am I getting old, right, but this stuff that's coming in is like, it's knocking me head off really. So I think once again, and that's really why I put east is east and west is west, because to me everything's about getting out of the way and allowing the balance to happen naturally. And that's difficult, and that's like feeling your way into, right, getting out of the way to be done too. I don't know whether that makes sense. From your nodding, I think that probably makes some sort of sense.
Okay, so uh, two pictures you've posted. You posted one picture on the 4th of April, and it was a picture of yourself holding a laptop.
I don't
And
remember.
it said ET5, and then it had codes under it. And then I researched the codes back then, and it said it's important. And then I left it, and it's come up again today, or yesterday for me. And it was about the matrix, going back to birth, being balanced with it, and it's just it's actually happening. I'll see if I can pull up the photo. If not, I'll send it to you to post with, or because it's very interesting how you get when you get messages. Sometimes, like you said, can you slow down? Because I don't understand what the message is. Well, when I got the message in April, I didn't understand what the message is, but they showed me the message again yesterday, and I went, oh, where's that picture? And I pulled it up and I went, oh, that makes sense now. But so April the 4th, my ions weren't at a level or at a frequency to comprehend it or verbalize it. Whereas now I go, oh, that's what it means. So it's interesting what you're saying. You have to say, can you slow down to catch up? Because sometimes that can be a while. Like
Yeah.
it can be months. You might have to go away and learn a skill, or go on holiday, or uh, completely change your diet for the actual clear message to come through. And who knows, that message still might evolve a lot. And we find that happens a lot with the beings that the kids draw as well. The first intel we get as the drawings get closer to completion, then they have more more data come through with the being in with the communications. It's like they upgraded us. So I'm sharing this because it just trying to work it all out. You do really go, am I crazy? Am I crazy? Am I crazy?
Well, I know that feeling very well. You know, I think I've mentioned before in 1987, which apparently was the time of something called the harmonic convergence, which I didn't know anything about these things, but you know, and it's a bit like what we're talking about now is I see that it's all sorts of different streams of consciousness, almost like disentangling really, and then more flows coming in. Well, that happened to me and it was so overpowering for me that I couldn't handle it, and I was running and smacking my head on the wall trying to let this stuff out. I was really crazy with it all, you know, and it was the worst time of my life really. And I see now that the information was flooding in cognitively, but emotionally I was so sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Disabled, almost emotionally disabled, that I couldn't process what was coming in, you know. And what you've mentioned there is important to me because I'm seeing it now that in order for us to get better, even though we're not unwell, but in order to improve our understanding of what's actually happening at the moment, I think that we have to be guided from deep within ourselves through feelings to go through this disentanglement process. I call it quantum disentanglement. Through this quantum disentangling process, but it has to be done in a particular sequence. And this is where the timelines come in. It has to be guided. But if I think with my ego head, I need to go and do some toning now or some running because that's what I need to do, it might be completely the opposite thing that I need to do. Maybe you just need to sit down and relax for a day or two. So this has got to be guided from a much more refined and almost like quieter guidance place, right? And to trust this process of being guided by this deeper intuitive process. I keep getting this all the time, Elsa. You know, this is about resequencing and almost unlocking potentials by going backwards in the right order, because you've been blocked because of fear processed actions in the past. And now we have to fearlessly go back and take actions to disentangle what was obstructed. Now, you know, I'm going on a bit here, but, you know, I know that you know what I mean, but what do you think?
Well, that picture of you with ET5, the words I got was between the matrix and birth. And what you're speaking of now is you need to untangle all the spaghetti and all the cords knotted up, and you have to untangle to go back to the birthplace, your placenta, where you find your alignment. And once you've gone to that spot, it's like a calibration spot, and you can keep going. Once you know how to get to the calibration spot, you can return there easily. But that, you know, that might mean a few dark night of the soul nights and all that sort of stuff. But once you get to that calibration point where you place of entry, you know how it feels to get there. So it's like learning how to drive a car. You've learnt how to stop and start and turn the vehicle, so it becomes more automatic. So then it becomes easier and easier, and then, like you said, the buzz comes in really quickly, and you go, oh, that I understand that feeling. I understand what that feeling is. That's me back at my place of entry before the matrix. And the matrix needs to be unraveled carefully because the way it's been put together has made us fragile. So, but once you get to the place of entry, you realize how you aren't as fragile as the matrix has made us out to be. But to get to that spot, it has to be undone in a sequence, which I thought was a great way of explaining it.
This
I
is
got all
marvelous.
this from your laptop.
Yeah, yeah,
Your
yeah.
laptop.
But you see, I've got now. This is what I get when we're in alignment and we're talking about the right things. I get like a feeling, it comes like this Kundalini thing that comes up, and so it comes up, and now I'm flowing out of the top of my head. So I've got this sort of like a knee trembler feeling going right up my spine and out of the crown of the head, So I get that when we're aligned, and the discussion is, aligned really. And what this all means to me is, the matrix again, mother, martyr, material. It's almost like dematerializing and go back into the morphogenetic fields where there was some disentangling that needs. So this is almost like we have to go back into the different dimensions and ascend, but during that ascension process there's some disentangling to take place until we get right back to the original smiling face of the universe. I see all this, and I did a talk a few years ago which I called the Mummy's Curse, really. and it's really about womb ecology, and this is it's about womb ecology, really, and it's really about the chemical constitution, right, of the liquor amnii, the water of life, in the sac when the embryo and the fetal is developing. And so the chemical compositions in that, will actually cause, if you like, an obstruction to the true flow of untainted expression of the gene code for that particular soul. So these are all the things that I get, really. But the mum's emotional state when she's carrying the child, right, will impact as well, because her emotional state will cause the biochemistry. So this is really like the biology is formed because of the biochemical environment. Now, I've gone through this process a lot, because my mum and me still have a really, really strong bond between us. And the relationship I've had with my mum has been one of love and one of hate as well, right? Real deep resentment and hate. Because, you talk about oversensitivity, because I was born 6 weeks premature. And by the way, my birthday, as I mentioned, is March the 19th. Which in some calendars is the last day of the year, right? And it's just the day before the new birth, spring and stuff like that. But that's an aside. But to go back to my mum, you mentioned chord, and I got harmony, right, and disharmony. So the chord between the child and the baby, right? That's almost like a resonant point where things get sort of disharmonized for a purpose. I've got no idea what I'm talking about here, so I'll just go on. But I think there's also a soul involvement as well, based upon the soul's curriculum, because all these things are already chosen before we come here. So there's almost like an obstruction to the harmonious nature of what can be for a purpose. Over to you, Elsa, and see what you can pick out of that.
This comes back to me having 8 children, and please, I did not plan to have 8 children.
No.
No one. So the having home births and natural births as well. We would we would be able to touch and play with the placenta. So we were very hands-on with the whole birth, the kids, the children as well. So we would hold the placenta, we called it the baby's bedroom. And we'd hold it up, and it looks exactly like a delta where the river mouth goes out. It's a channel. So when you check on the origin words of gene, birth, the human race, how we got here, all those things all come back to us being channels. And so you have the cord to the mother, but then you have channels out, all these channels out, and that's us. So we have to return back to that place so that the channels out can receive everything that we need. And it's interesting because animals actually do this naturally. So, and I believe a lot of the contact that we've had, they are quite amazed that we don't do this. And I've heard many other spiritual people bring this up a lot. Some of them have even explained it as a jealousy of us. And I came to some sort of conclusion this week that possibly the reason that we're so different to them is we have the senses. And it's our senses are different to how their senses are. And I keep feeling that that has something to do with it. It's something to do with our gravity and the senses. And they're learning from us because even though they might be more advanced in many other ways, what we're doing right now, they can't get a grasp on. So we are literally like pioneers to them, because when we're not only returning to what they are like, but we also have the emotions and the senses and the choice point. And this is something I don't believe they have. And something, I think that this is exciting to me, because it blows away all that fragileness, fragile human, and it makes us realize how powerful we are. And it's amazing.
This is fascinating, this, because this is what I'm getting at the same time as well. You mentioned gravity, and we have anti-gravity muscles as well that keeps us upright. And I keep getting, Joe, it's so important. Postural alignment in the human being is so important for information to come through. And if you consider that most of us are sort of almost like cripples in a physical sense, in that we're not aligned properly, we're all out of alignment. And when you're out of alignment with gravity, there's always too much force coming down on us, because what's supposed to happen is the anti-gravity muscles are antagonistic, they call it, that, you know, one works one way, one works the other. And if they're in perfect alignment, there's almost like a loop. It's just a loop of energy that comes in, and there's no effort needed really, because the forces of gravity are actually working, because there's an uplifting force and there's a down force as well. And so when they're in alignment, there's no effort necessary. However, most of us, because we don't realize this, we're out of alignment. We're either sitting at a computer all day long, our hips become tight, you know, and this is, you know, I could go on about the iliopsoas complex and stuff like that, you know, because it impacts upon the sacral chakra as well, which is the seat of creativity. It's also the sex center as well, but it's also to do with creativity as well. And most of us are out of alignment in our first two chakras, and therefore we don't have sufficient energy really to uplift us through this ascension process. So we'll almost get blocked. We can move up into the third chakra, which is the solar plexus, which is almost like the social environment. But most of us haven't got sufficient uplift, right, in order to be taken up into the fourth chakra, which is the heart, you know. So most of us are blocked in lower heart, and we just need to basically realign ourselves and just sit, and we'll be automatically uplifted, right? It's a bit like that, you know, the two, what's that called? The Vesica Pisces, you know, and you said channel, and I got birth canal, because it's called the birth canal, right? You know, and I got channel and canal and cord and all those sorts of things. I'll send you a thing after this about, I've got a picture of the umbilical cord, right, and the placenta, where it meets the placenta and goes into the mum, and it's like a smiling face. So they've cut through this cross section, and that's the sort of image I used on my mummy's curse thing, you know. And it's highly hilarious to me, because, you know, we have this very, very strong ancient Egyptian connection, and I feel that I've been sort of tapped in a way, right, to this Imhotepian energy. Now, Imhotep is the father of medicine. It wasn't Hippocrates, it was Imhotep, really. And Imhotep was probably the first to actually write down information that he was receiving as well about realignment for the human race, So, I mean, Elsa, I don't know whether that's true or not, but this is the information that comes to me, and it doesn't really matter to me. But my whole job, really, I feel, is to translate this information into simple steps that everybody on the planet can take in order to realign themselves so that they can receive the information that they individually need. And at the beginning of our conversation, you talked about character. I think there's a complete difference between the ego self, which is personality, because persona means mask, and character. I think character, they're the characteristics of the energy construct of the soul itself. And I think what's actually happened is our personalities, which have been developed socially and constructed from external social influences, I think that's blocking us from feeling what we need to feel at the depth of this character, which is basically the soul's. I know I'm going on and I do this, but soul's purpose. So if we can sort of, as I've said before, metaphorically decapitate ourselves, because that's where the personality lives, or the ego. If we can throw our heads away in some sort of energetic way and just start to listen and allow this information to emerge intuitively, that will help us then to take the actions in a resequencing way, which will allow us to be individually to tune into our own information that we need in order to go forward and make the world a better place. Christ, considering I didn't have much to say at the start of this, I'm on one again. Over to you quickly.
This is great. So one of the things that I would do a lot was, because everyone was, like you said, you have to step out of the way of your ego, of the story of Elsa. So I would say, because everyone there was a stage a few years back where everyone was anti-ego, and I was like, well, I actually still like my ego. So my ego's taught me a lot of, most of the things I've learned through life are through mistakes. So, and I learned that through my ego. So my ego is like, I see it like as a little chisel. And if I need to ask for clear messages, I just say, well, we're just going to put the chisel over there for a bit. And it's not that I don't want to. I'm just going to put you over there for a little bit, and then once we've had what we need through, then I'll probably need you. So you just wait over there for a bit. So it was almost like a game I would play in my own self to quieten the mind, because it was so noisy. It was just like always throwing all these, like, it was like how we started this conversation, where it was interrupting everything. It was just rude. It wouldn't let anyone else come in, or the messages come in, because it was just kept interrupting. Oh, you got to do this. Oh, you got to do that. Oh, you got to, and how you said you had to zip it. Well, I had to ask my chisel or my ego to zip it for a bit. And I think it's funny because I've never thought of it like that before, but yeah, I've had to ask my ego, just zip it for a bit while I just collect all this, and I'll sit with it for a bit and rest with it and let it absorb it, and then I'll get the chisel again and we can work at it together.
Perfect. I love this, our conversations, because the confirmations, really, these conversations of the information that comes in beforehand, so like we said at the beginning, sometimes just sharing it, somebody can say, well, funnily enough, I've been thinking the same thing, and it's like, oh, okay. So it's almost like a confirmation. I mean, I don't have time now to read stuff. I used to read for information. I mean, that, that's how I studied my, my profession and stuff. I used to read loads, and I could take stuff in and store it in my knowledge, and then keep referring to the knowledge then. But I could see that's a trap, really, because, it can be sort of misinformation that we're taking in that seems to be true at the time and all that. So I don't know where I'm going with this, but, oh yeah, the ego thing. This is what I got, Joe. Help people to go from head to heart and back again, right? And that I get the infinity loop then as well, because it's mind, body, mind connection, and heart, brain, heart. So it's to come from the brain right? Because the brain's being overcomplicated. So it's to let the information from there filter down into the heart, to be reconfabulated in some sort of way, reconstructed, right? And then the heart then will send the information back to the brain. And I see that as the heart to me is the Christ center, to use these words, you know, without sort of getting into any sort of religious information. But I see the heart as the Christ center that's attached to the 12 cranial nerves. The 12 cranial nerves then are attached to the 12 meridians. The 12 meridians then are attached to all sorts of other 12s. And that goes out in this sort of dodecahedral shape, you know. But what I've got recently is, Joe, the hemispheres of the brain, they're not just left and right. It's a globe, it's a sphere, you know. So when the information's actually coming through and the human is evolving, it's not just going back to forward, left and right. It's going back and front as well. So there's a spiral dynamic, right, that's going through. I got all this yesterday about spirals, and people, as this great big shift in consciousness is coming in, like this great big wave of cleansing, as it's coming in, people who are hanging on to ideas from the past and old habits, they're almost going to be turned round in a spin. And there's loads and loads of people now who are having like a sort of their cerebral cortex, because it's obstructed on one side, it's actually sending them physically into a spin movement, right? And there's pictures now where people are sort of having epileptic fits, but in a spin direction now, and they're either turning left to right. And that depends whether they're left brain processes or right brain processes. And I have to say to them, hang on, slow down, right? So what's actually happening is, if we can help people to let go, this is my job, is to help them to get into the heart, because when they're fully in the heart, their head temporarily lets go. And the scales, which normally jump from one side to the other to try and come up with the decision, the scales then automatically balance out. And the information then is spread out across the whole globe. Over to you, Elsa.
So we stabilize.
Absolutely.
This is stabilizing our ions, and whatever way you can stabilize is essential, especially because they knew that this year was coming with the energy, and they knew the force of this year. So stabilize your ions. That's what we're talking about. So the ions in us, if they are erratic, they can't, they're not working together. They're almost like fighting each other or bouncing off each other. But if you can start to stabilize them, then they come into a flow. And then the flow creates channels between the ions. See what's happening when they're fighting like this. So you say you have channels. So we have a bubble bath. This is the way I describe it to the kids. So we have a bubble bath, and the bubbles, and you can see the water, and it can go all around the bubbles, and it's quite harmonious. But if they're like this, like hammering each other, it keeps getting broken, the space between. And that's what's happening inside our bodies. And I am not a scientist or any medical person, but they keep showing me it's really important to stop the shudder, calm it down, then the flow happens, and then it lifts. They get heightened. The ions in us get heightened, and this is all water. And see, what's happening is this energy is coming in, and it's buzzy. Even if you are stabilized, it's very buzzy for our bodies. And I see it in the animals and plants as well. I don't just see it in us. I see it actually also in appliances, especially like the cars and the boat, anything with like water in it. And if you can just calm it down, once it calms down, then you recalibrate, you recolonize, and the channels are open for it to come in. And it sounds, sometimes I look at it all and I think, oh, it sounds so silly. Who is this lady talking about this stuff? But I see how it works, and I see how our family are when we're out and about, and what happens to our family. And because there's so many of us at so many different generation levels as well, I see how we handle situations. And we're not trained to handle all these different situations, but I definitely see how our family seem to be in a calmer state because we are continually stabilizing. We're continually, like you said, speaking, debriefing, letting it go, allowing, letting it go, allowing, so that it can flow through us rather than the forcing it and shut up.
This is marvelous, because this is why it's so important that we have these conversations, really. Because first of all, it says to me, you're not cracking up, Joe, right? You're not the only one who's thinking like this, because I've been given information on the fourth phase of water, It's called the EZ phase. It's called the exclusion zone, right? And I also got as well, you will be talking with Elsa tomorrow about magnetohydrodynamics, okay? And what magnetohydrodynamics is, it's really about the flow where magnetic energy impacts upon electrical energy and the conductivity through water, but through the fourth phase of water. Now, when this was introduced, this concept, like every new paradigm, it was laughed at. What a load of old baloney, I meant to say. What a load of old baloney. But now, more and more, the science is coming around to say, oh, there may well be this fourth phase of water, right, that happens in the interface between cells. So there's a biological aspect here as well, and it all will enhance. So we can actually manipulate this through mindfulness and calming. We can allow this fourth phase of water and the information to flow in more readily, so that we'll be able to go forward once again on our own individual consciousness. So this is dead important. So magnetohydrodynamics is associated with the energy that's coming in, associated once again with the feminine energy, right, which is the rebalancing process. Now, here's something people, I think, in my own feeling, I could be wrong, but I think some people have got hold of the wrong end of the stick here, where because it's the feminine energy that's coming in, I think that they have to feel that they have to be the force now to overpower the masculine because of all the terrible things that the masculine has done over eons of time. And I would say, no, it isn't about that. It's once again getting your ego out of the way to allow the balancing process to happen naturally, without any redirection from the ego because of past hurts, past resentments and stuff like that. So there's almost like a forgiveness thing coming in here as well, which will cause, the forgiveness isn't for forgiving the other person, it's to let us off the hook. So if we've got any resentments and anger hooks and all that sort of thing from the past, it's for us to take that hook out of ourselves and to let it go now. And then we become freed. That's what forgiveness is. It doesn't mean to say that the behavior from the past, right, should be, what's the word I'm looking for? Should be forgiven. You know, we don't have to put up with bad behavior. But if we're still hanging on to it at a deep level, then we're still obstructed. And the information that we need to come through can't come through. So I don't know whether that makes sense. But once again, just to say the word, these are the words I got yesterday. Is once, because I know what magnetohydrodynamics is, right? But I got, once again, Joe, it's about something called flux capacitance. And I said, isn't that Back to the Future film? Yes, Joe, it is about flux capacitance, but it's true, right? And you can actually use this flux capacitance to actually store energy, the energy that's being given away. You can actually allow it to be stored, so then you can move up through the various ascension processes. But if you keep giving your energy away all the time, and there's this accentuated antagonism where you're fighting, your cells are fighting with each other all the time, then the energy is being dissipated and it's not being focused. I'll just say this last bit, Joe, there are unscrupulous forces at work in the cosmos that are actually trying to stop you accumulating your own energy and re-empowering yourself. But the idea would be is the more that you can discern where you feel the energy is being given away, the more you can step in, calm down, allow it to build up again so that you can actually go forward. Over to you, Elsa.
Oh, one of the biggest forms of energy is called CERN, and you just said to discern. So there's no coincidences with the wordplay. So I've brought this up before. The difference between sacred and scared is AC, which is electricity, frequency. So again, your choice. And it's important to just keep coming back to how do I feel? How do I feel? How do I feel? You're not meant to feel like Dr. Joe. You're not meant to feel like Elsa. You're meant to feel like the unique feeling that you are. Go back to the calibration point, calm down, and then go from that point. You will not be able to make any clear decisions when you're this. When you're in this mode, your life will feel like it's going too fast. You'll feel like you have no control. You'll feel fragile. You'll feel frazzled. If you're feeling any of those things, you really got to say, what am I doing here? What am I doing? It's as simple as that. What am I doing? I'm not meant to feel this way. I'm meant to feel all my emotions and feelings and then move forward. I'm not meant to feel this. So where is all this coming from? And it's coming from the programs. You have to acknowledge that and see, if you keep supporting the Matrix program, it just continues. So how do you stop it? And then you have to search in yourself, what's one thing I could do to turn the program off? It can be simple as not eating that anymore, or having a longer rest, or sitting in the sun, or walking my dog longer. Just talking to my kids once a day. I honestly don't know what it is for each person, because I'm not each person, but we have to start breaking down the matrix in ourselves. Once this happens, then it starts to channel. So I'm going to give you an example. Today, so Richard went out very early and he went out fishing. Jet, our son, he went out on his little tinny and he went out fishing. So they're out in the ocean. They had no one around them except the whales migrating with their babies. So it was mother and child. So Richard found that quite interesting, because we've been going on about the mother energy. And he said they were out there and it was just there was no humans around. I'm home. I post up a promo with a gentleman that I feel is connected with military or something. He's quite connected, right? They're on the boat. Within half an hour to an hour of me posting the promo up, 3 fighter jets fly over Jet, Richard, and the girls. They flew over so low that they could read the missiles on the plane. Jet and his friend, they filmed it on their phones. That was so low, their ears shuddered for 10 minutes afterwards. That's how low the planes were. And so the first two planes went to the east, Richard said, and then the last one aimed at Richard's boat with the girls. And it actually hit Richard as this plane, because it was coming at such a speed, this could take us out. That's how low. And the suction of water and everything. And Richard pointed his arm up like that, like a gesture, not an anger, just like, I see you. The plane tilts to its side. But he said it tilted to its side, but it didn't go off course. It stayed on course, but it tilted. And then it went over. And so he comes home and tells me, I check on his phone the time that it happened. It's exactly the same time that I post up. Now, that is a pretty far-fetched story to say it's connected. I have no doubt that it's connected. Yeah. None. And that is how amazing the technologies are advanced than what we believe. And it sounds like a sci-fi film, what I'm telling you. But I'm telling you, this happens to us all the time. And it used to be it would be 24 hours, and it went to 12 hours, and it went to 6, then it got down to then now it's within an hour, and sometimes it's like, we're talking minutes or seconds. And I'm bringing this up because I notice it. Now, if Dr. Joe notices it, and 10 people that Dr. Joe notices it, then we start to go, I'm not fragile. This is really happening. This is really happening. This is not make-believe. This is really happening to our family, or this is really happening for me on my jog. These messages coming through, this synchronicity, this is all happening for my show. So each person now collects their show and their story. Wow. The matrix is gone. How can the matrix be around that? It just is, it's impossible.
In 1987, during that episode, I was trying to say to people, the lampposts are listening to us. The lampposts are spying on us, right? And we started at the beginning of this to say, sometimes you get the information before time, right? And so, when I was driving through local villages now, you can see the cameras and the listening devices on all the lampposts now, as part of this move towards this containment and this smart thing that's going on, you know what I mean? So what the information I was getting there in 1987, God knows how many years ago that was, is actually in place now. So it's almost as if the information then, the timelines are sort of collapsing, and, we're being given the Asian more currently now, talking about currents, and stuff like that. So the new currency, right, so there's the financial thing going on as well. So all that stuff that I was having, because they tried to diagnose me with schizophrenia and all these sorts of things. And I think that schizophrenia is simply just a misunderstanding of the information that's coming in and a lack of the ability to emotionally process the information. I see that clearly now, because to me, schizophrenia is just misunderstood multiple intelligences. And I think that that's what's happening now, is all humans now are being bombarded in their 12 potentials now. And there's information coming in at different frequencies in these different streams now. So my job is to tell people of my experience, tell them how I see it, right? And then show them practical, simple steps then of how to get into their heart. Something I've been told to say as well is that people have to understand that the heart signature that's given out is the consequence of all the processing, both thinking and feeling, cognitively and emotionally, it's the whole process in information is put out in a certain pattern of the heart. What the heart gives out in this pattern will attract to it the next stage of your development as well. So it's what you give out, you get back. So it's almost like the soul constructs a stage every single day through which you have to go, take actions then. So if people can only start to listen to their hearts and look out to see the stage that's set every single day, then they'll be able to understand then in a very simple way how to navigate what's coming up through life at the moment, and this matrix construct. Over to you, Elsa. Oh, by the way, so sorry to interrupt. Fragility then, there's a new word out now. It used to be called becoming emotionally resilient, but the new word on the block is becoming anti-fragile. It's called anti-fragility. Okay, so if you Google anti-fragility, it's a bit high-powered intellectually type. It's sort of from the boffins, you know what I mean? But anti-fragility means that you're tougher than you think you are, but you're still flexible enough as well.
What's interesting is that having to go back to the unraveling of when you came here, because you were fragile at that stage as a fetus, and so you go back to the fragile to realize you're not fragile, and then you come, so you said, so you go back down through the brain and come down to the center, and then you go, I'm not fragile, and then you open up, and then all the channels open up, and then you start doing the flow, like you said, the horus or the aid, or then other stuff starts to unfold for you, and then you share that with others, which then it ignites others. This is what East and West is. East and West came up. We have had two big craft sightings this week, and the second one I haven't posted up yet, but the first one was a fleet of 9, and I was actually in a Zoom, and the jet called me outside, and he said, Mum, come out. So I had to interrupt the Zoom session. I said, I have to go out. And again, we're not NASA. We only have our little phones, and we have enough time to run out there. Even though they go slowly through the sky, it's quick. It's not like this 1 hour session. It's you got to grab your phone and try and work out how to film it. Anyway, they went east, this fleet, and the message that I got from them is that this is what they're heading to dawn, to the awakening. And it was they showed me the message was the 9-to-5ers, which I thought was cute. The 9-to-5ers are literally going to arise with the sun, with the light, and they're going to come through. And I did not realize that East and West is actually terms from solar. That's how they got the terminology of East and West. West is actually austral.
Yeah.
So I found that quite interesting. So it's a lot to do with gold in the West. And it's funny because Australs, it looks like Australia without the IA on the end. It's funny because if you knew me when I was a child, my vocabulary was so poor, yet now I've gone past the 9-to-5 language, and I've gone back to origin words. And one thing I have learnt over the years is they actually stopped teaching Latin in school, and I think my year level was the last year level that had Latin taught in schools in Australia. After that, that was my first year of high school. After that, they stopped teaching it. And now I know why. Because if you knew all this stuff, it's easy to pick it apart. And once you pick something apart, it just crumbles.
I love this, I love this so much because it's just the same information. When you said, oh, see, I've got it again, here it comes now in a big way. I nearly cried then because bringers of the dawn, that's what I got, the bringers of the dawn. And, I don't talk to many people in my field, in the field of medicine, about Pleiadian influences and stuff like that, But I know very, very well that I'm being influenced, right, by this Pleiadian current that comes in. It's not the only influence that I get, really, because there's like 12 channels that I can tune into. See, I almost like see these as different attributes and skills. And if it was like plastering a wall, I'd say, hello, everybody, listen up. I need a plasterer. If you could send a plasterer down, please. And honestly, Elsa, right, it's almost as if I can just do plastering, right? And so I get this sort of multiple sort of communication system. I ask them all the time, can you give me the required information, right, in order for me to do this better, So, and that's what I do all the time, And I know quite a lot about the different planets and the different influences and stuff, because for a long, long time, I became very interested in something called cheilontic science. Now, there are people who knock it, but, to me, going right back to origin and source, it's the most comprehensive understanding of the universe that I've ever come across. Now, it works for me, right? And it makes perfect sense. And it makes perfect sense about the fall from grace and all this stuff. Now, I believe that the information that we get is pre-fall and even pre-source. It's almost like, right, out of this galaxy and into a more expanded universe, And people talk about our sun and this solar system, and then they talk about the great galactic central sun as well. And I think that the information that we're getting is from that primary source, right, where it all became. So I sort of don't pay too much attention, right, to the intermediaries. If I really don't know, I'll drop deep into my heart and go back to the primal focal point of where it all became, where it all, and that's what I do. I'm trying to show people is to cut out the middlemen as such, and not to be too, or the middle women as well, but not to be too sort of over influenced by it, but just ask for the help, listen to the information. And this is the most important thing then, is sink deep into your heart and say, is this true? And is this what I need to do next? And it'll get a feeling then of openness and enthusiasm. And that's what I tend to go with now.
It's, yeah, you coming to that point though is tricky. And when am I at that point? When am I at that point? And sometimes I'm at that point and I can feel when I'm not at that point. I can feel that I'm off.
Yeah.
So if I'm off and I project words, I know that the outcome will give me a lesson. So if someone's annoying me and I'm annoyed, I know I'm off. So if I then speak in the annoyed mode, get ready because you're going to get a lesson. And again, in our family, there's a lot of lesson teachers at different ages as well. So you just, it's, you can't get away with it, really. You just can't. In our house, we don't have a huge house, so we can't get away with it. So if you're going to be in a mood, everyone in the house knows it. Go away and do something, or just don't talk. Go away and do something, or talk to someone who will listen to you or vent. But to try and get something done in that mode it's a disaster. Really is a disaster. And I do, my ego comes in and I do test it out occasionally. I have to have, a little lesson, a little smack.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder that I'm human. It's a reminder that I'm possibly still might have a cupboard to clean out somewhere inside, but it's okay as well. I don't beat myself up about it too much. um, but
I
it's
sorry.
important to be that honest and open and allowing, because through me being honest and open and allowing with myself and showing that I do have those moments, makes everyone else feel, oh, yeah, there's no perfect way to be, because everything is constantly changing. The only constant is change. So how can you be perfect? Because you'll only be perfect for that second, and then the second changes. So
I agree, and that's my whole thing, is that if we're feeling emotionally disturbed, it means that we're misaligned with true flow, but there may be something in that disturbance that we need to see. So rather than emotionally react and go with it, is to then breathe it out, take a step back, ask for what's being shown. Do I need to see something and that'll resolve the flow, or do I need to take an action? Right. And generally speaking, it'll be something simple to say, no, you actually, you said something there that was offensive to that person. Go back and apologize. Oh, do I have to? You know, the little kid comes in. Oh, do I have to? Yes, you do. Oh, okay, then, you know. So I welcome these triggers, because the triggers are just another sort of information point to me. And you know, so we think the same way. You know, is it a cupboard or a door that needs opening to let the air, the stale air out and stuff like that? You know, um, we've come to time. You know, this is what happens: is we start, it goes quickly, and there's so many things that my ego wanted to talk about. You know, and you mentioned venting. You know, and we vent our spleen, don't we? And that's the thing I wanted to talk about. A long time ago, maybe 25, 30 years ago, I was introduced to something called radionics. And radionics really is about energy flow. I didn't really understand any of it then, but they then said that the heart really is the pump, like you've said. It's the spleen that needs to be paid attention to. And I've called it the splenic triangle. And I'll send you a link to it. I'll send you the picture, because it's all in there really, because radionics deals with the seven chakras, because there's lots and lots of different chakras, but they stick with the seven major primary chakras, right? And they use pendulum dowsing to see whether the chakra is in alignment and stuff like that. But they talk about the importance of this energy triangle, right, to do with the heart and the spleen and a point in the back by the scapula here. So I'll send you that information, because my feeling is that the human heart really, it's almost like the gates have to become open, right? And when the gates open, then we actually drop lower then into the soul vibration, which is very much associated with the spleen as well then. And there's so much good, because the spleen's also part of a cleansing process. It produces blood cells as well. And if there's a lot of contamination, the spleen can become blocked, and we can start to feel diseasy, ill at ease with ourselves. The anger builds up, and sometimes we express it, and it can be very destructive. So the spleen, you know, lots of people have their spleen taken out when they've got blood diseases and things like that. You know, it changes them psychologically, because I've dealt with a lot of people who've had leukemia and stuff like that in the past, and they get their spleen removed, because the spleen's basically like a big cleansing device, really. So maybe on our next chat, they'll, you know, because I think that we get guided to talk about what needs to be talked about for various reasons that we don't understand, but it comes in later. So Elsa, I think more than anything else is my whole reason for setting this up, I feel, was to help to give people some, what's the word I'm looking for? Understanding that you're not bonkers. You know, there's lots of people who think the same way, but simple, practical, straightforward advice in order for them to clear any blockages and start to get their own flow going. So just before we go, got any tips?
okay, so you said the spleen and you said seven, And this energy of mother is the golden ratio, the gold rose. The golden ratio is acid and alkalinity in the body. So when you go to 7, that's pure water. On either side, one's milk and one's blood. Now, 7 is, so this is because I always understood that Trinity was really important, the 3. So the 3 was just the biggest thing for me. Then I got my horse. My horse means the Royal 4, which is, her name's Reba. The Royal 4, which is the 4 directions. So now we're coming back to east-west. So north, south, east, west. That's the 5th point is our spleen or belly button or place of entry, placenta. Placebo effect comes from here. Anyway, so that is our 5th element. So you have 3 and you have to have the 4 to make 7 to bring you to the golden ratio. And when you look at the virtuous man, it goes through his belly button, Leonardo da Vinci. So they knew about it way back then. It's that 7. And 7 has, since we've shifted to this area, 7 has become a really big deal for us. 7 is actually heaven, Eve, level best. And that has been my goal since the last few weeks is, am I at my level best? Am I at my level best before I speak to that person? And if I did speak out of line, come back to my level best. And like you said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm rattled. I'm sorry. Come back to level best. Come back to level best. And that's the level best is the 7. It's the pure water. It's where the intelligence can flow. And that's my game plan at the moment.
Marvelous, because I get level par, you see, and I got what do you mean par? Because I played a lot of golf when I was a kid. I was pretty good at it, and even par, right, or level par. I got what do you mean par? Why are you giving me this? Because Joe, positive and realistic, right? So none of this positive psychology that does this rah rah rah, yes you can, right? None of that, right? Because that's a forced sort of false thing. But it's to let the head go and he will settle down, and then that will be level par then, So yeah. lots of different things. Elsa, I'm going to have to go because I've got like proper work to do. Yeah. I've got to mark all sorts of essays and dissertations and stuff. This is the thing that brings in the money, And if I said I was happy doing it, I can open my heart and feel joy. That would be a lie, right? Because I think, oh my God, this is so boring. But it brings the money in, so I'm just going to have to keep doing it. So that's where I'm up to. But it's so lovely to see you, and maybe soon we can have another one, right? If you're up for it.
So your marking assignments. I'll be quick.
Yeah.
Because when our children were going to school, we would have to do these big school projects. And I learned so much intel from assisting the kids do the school project. I wouldn't be surprised if the ions of whose papers that you're marking are speaking to you. I'd love to hear back from you on this. If you looked at it in a way that maybe each assignment was speaking to you.
Well, I know exactly what you mean, because when I'm reading it, I'm thinking, oh, I never knew that. And then again, you see, Joe, you don't know everything, right? So no, I understand what you're saying, but there's still a big part of me that thinks, oh Christ, there we go again, as you say, I have to remind myself, but there is a human part of you here, so. Elsa, I love you. Thanks very much. It's so lovely talking to you, and keep in touch, and I'll dig that thing out, the radionics thing and the spleen thing, and I'll scan some of the pictures and send it to you. I'll also send you the cross section of the placenta as well with the smiley face on it.
Thank you.
You're
Thanks
welcome.
for having me again. I love speaking with you.
Lovely to see you, and I hope the rest of your evening is pleasant, and speak to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.